Why, hello everybody. My name is Steve Usher and a warm welcome to the Experienced Designers podcast. So my next guest I met during an event in Serbia where we were both speaking at a HR event. And there's something about the keynote speaker journey, you know, the beforehand, the sweaty, nervous, doing your power pose before you get up on stage, to then the during and the absolute privilege to stand in front of over 300 people and share something you're passionate about, to then the after, that absolute relief and satisfaction that you did it. And of course, always in any of these situations, the learning you take from the whole experience itself. And as all of the speakers go through this experience together, I always find it interesting to observe the connection you make with people during these memorable moments. Definitely learning here for us all. So it's an absolute privilege to have met Sabrina Dick, HR Director at SAP. A ball of energy, full of gratitude, and an openness to sharing insights into the launch of their new HR operating model. I was curious, what drove this change? Why now? And how are they aiming to bring value to the organisation in new ways? So without further ado, let's dive in. Sabrina, welcome to the Experienced Designers.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Oh, me too. I'm very, very grateful. And of course, we shared an amazing stage in Serbia, didn't we, at Disrupt HR?
We did, yeah. That was quite an event, I have to say. And I've made so many connections that I'm still in touch with afterwards. It was really amazing. Loved it.
It was amazing. Let's just share a little bit on this, because Disrupt HR is, especially Serbia. I mean, no disrespect to any others, but for me, I was really thinking about going to Serbia, experiencing Belgrade and the hospitality, and the team that obviously run the Disrupt HR event was amazing. The venue was really unique, and just what a movement I think that's going on out there.
What totally. I love, like, and I've said this before. Serbia is one of my, let's say, favorite countries to travel to in my job, simply because of the people and the culture there. I just feel like it's not only it's hard work, but also live your life, and this I think shows in pretty much everything that they do in the whole approach. And with Disrupt HR, I think they have transformed the whole event into just that by choosing this amazing location as well, that it's, super rough, and, it's an old building, but, transformed into something super modern. So it's, again, disrupting. And the community is just easygoing, super open, but also, challenging and demanding. If you talk to them, like they really want to move something, and they really want to be at the forefront of HR in the country, in Europe, and in the world. And I just, the energy was just amazing at the event. And plus, I have to say, it disrupted the way I usually do keynotes as well. Like, that's what I said to Masha at the time. That for me was also a bit of a disruption, since I usually don't, script my things, into like 20 seconds when the slides move by itself. But that gives it a whole unique vibe as well. So perfectly organized event. Great. Great atmosphere.
I agree. And for those that aren't aware of Disrupt HR, the format is it every 20 seconds, 15 slides, was it?
Mm-hmm.
And, as a speaker, half an hour or 40-minute keynote is easy in comparison to creating and delivering story and a narrative and knowledge in 5 minutes. I found that the prep for it was really challenging. But I have to say, everybody who was there, the diversity of the speakers and their content, I thought was fantastic. What a hit of knowledge that you get from so many different areas as an audience. So super grateful, and of course that gave us the opportunity to connect, and I think it's that's one of the amazing things. And here we are today. Where are you today, by the way? Where are you today?
I'm at home in my home office. Since I've had an early start with calls, I decided to stay at home and record this from home and not
Uh,
go to the office. Yeah.
Perfect. So we're joining remotely today, and so look, I just also wanted to, because I had a little dig into your background, a little sneaky look into LinkedIn, and just see, okay, what's Sabrina all about? Let's have a look to see your career journey and stuff. And I was there was two things I wanted just to delve in, just a way of the audience learning a little bit more about you. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. This year was 16 years at SAP. Is that correct?
Yes, that
Wow,
is correct.
what a
Yeah,
journey!
I know. It's crazy.
And I was really interested because did you start as an intern, or what was your starting point into the, because I think you did a thesis on approaches to shared services in HR for EMEA based multinationals, which I thought, okay, I guess you already knew at that age where you wanted to head. It's quite interesting.
That is very true. So yeah, what I did is like in Germany, but I think it's a concept in many other countries too, is that you can write your final thesis in collaboration with a company. And then have a case study that you work on, an empirical study that you work on, and that's what I did. And was, as always, it was by coincidence. I talked to my professor, and she had this person from HR reach out to her saying they're looking for somebody to support them on such a trend analysis, which is what they called it at that time, because it was just the more or less, let's say, all of the big companies were at least thinking about defining and setting up shared services centers for HR. SAP had just opened their EMEA shared services center in Prague right at the time, and we're still building it up, starting with the, let's say, first basic functions there for finance and also HR. And because we were also, of course, selling the software at the time, they wanted to know where the heads of the HR leaders in the region are at, and where the trends are going. So this is what I signed up for. It was amazing. I only realized much later on the connections that I've made, because when you're a student, you sometimes don't know the magnitude of leaders that you talk to and the connections that you've made, but also how much, honestly, what I've done there has then truly become a reality a couple of years later. I mean, that was, to me, it was new to the topic then. And yeah, I loved it. I wrote that thesis together with SAP, and then afterwards joined SAP as a full-time employee in that very shared service center in Prague, but on the finance side at the time.
Mm. And I mean, 16-year journey since that's how. I'll just quick reflection on that time.
Mm. And I thought about that a lot, especially in the last couple of weeks, because it's so long. But then as well, I've changed board areas or functions as well, not only roles, but really functions. I've worked for finance, and then I worked in our internal business consulting department. I then worked in our consulting sales department, and only then came to HR as a program manager at the time, and then developed into an HR leader, so to say. And I truly have to say that between all these different functions, the culture differs, of course, the focus, anyhow, of, let's say, of the tasks, but also really the culture. And plus, SAP has developed such a big deal in these 16 years. Like when I wrote my thesis, SAP had like 33,000 employees across the globe. And now we have more than 110,000. So it's a different, it's a different company in many aspects, but let's say the spirit and the SAP spirit, I believe we have still kept, which is a great thing.
Which is a really good thing. So good to hear. So good to hear. And one more thing I also picked up, just I have to ask, CrossFit.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
I have to ask because I saw it and I was like, okay, let's, yeah, I'd love to. Yeah. Is that a passion of yours? Is that something which is, yeah, part of your
It is.
life?
It is. It is. I mean, I hated sports like for pretty much all of my life. But then oh my goodness, when was that? I think it's 6 years ago or 7 years ago, even. I was at a point where I really like physically also, I didn't feel good anymore, I had high blood pressure and stuff. And so my brother was already very much into working out. And so I joined that gym, which was not yet a CrossFit box, it was a regular gym at our town. And I started to really work out and follow a plan of one of the coaches there, who then later on opened the first CrossFit box in our town here. And I'm member number 8, I think. So I've been there from the start. I I to me CrossFit is just it's a great way to become fit and stay fit by really utilizing all of your body's movements and abilities by combining weightlifting and cardio,
Mm,
to really train it, let's say, holistically, in a way that I mean, I don't have time to work out multiple hours a day, and but I still want to ensure that I keep fit. And so to me, CrossFit has given me that ability. Um, I most recently went a little more into endurance work because post COVID, I just I had to train a little bit more my endurance, which honestly I'm really looking forward to joining the classes again, because simply it's more fun. It's a sense of community, but nobody else, like we're so diverse and nobody really cares what you do and who you are. We're just
mm,
in this together, and I love this brings you
that's
out of
amazing.
this whole working context every time you go
Yes.
there.
And of course, for well-being, this kind of activity now, particularly working from home more, not, even just the small things of commute and movement,
Yes.
we need to that. Yeah. I mean, as we know, well-being is, super hot topic in lots of organizations
Yeah.
now, to really support employees in different ways and to encourage them in different ways. Very cool. Very cool. So look, let's jump into an area which I'm so curious to hear your views on and just get your perspective on this, on a really broad topic, the HR function, and
Mhm.
also as an industry. Um, there's HR doesn't get a good rap in some organizations. I think in many lots of organizations they probably have some bad PR potentially, but also during COVID, it was, I don't know if you saw this, a really interesting words started to kind of come out in LinkedIn, for an example. You see some of the trends and how HR was being praised and how supported they've been and how much they'd stepped up to the plate in these
Mhm.
really challenging times when the humans inside the organization were all being forced into these situations. So, and I think that was such an amazing time for me because I was like, this is brilliant. This is actually some of the work that probably they've been doing anyway, but in different contexts, but perhaps haven't really had either the visibility or the appreciation actually for what that function or in the discipline does. And then since then, it's just been, I think it's been brilliant actually, to see some of the evolution. What's your thoughts on that? What have you seen in the last kind of 3, 4, 5 years from a HR industry perspective?
I completely agree with you. What I always said. So let's say I'm a big believer in digitalization of HR, in the sense that make digital whatever is possible to standardize, and also whatever is possible to ensure we're compliant and we have all the information that we need at one place if we need it. And we've been talking about, or I mean, we as SAP, of course, simply because the good thing is that we drink our own champagne, we utilize our own solutions, but we started that journey into the cloud HR solutions, back in 2015, and we really rethought our HR model back at the time and changing our viewpoint from we are the HR experts, we define the processes, we standardize into, hey, let's put ourselves in the shoes of our managers and employees, and let's really define how they would like to experience certain let's say every step of their journey within SAP, to put it in a very easy context. And we've been talking about that, and I've talked to a lot of HR peers, especially in the last 5 years within Eastern Europe, I have to say, where of course they were miles away from even thinking about investing in HR, in digitalizing HR, because HR is, we have to have it. People need to get their money at the end of the day. But why, spending so much money on this function? We need to see, how we can stay productive and things like that. I think COVID, as any crisis or let's say any event that's happening unexpectedly, brings huge opportunity for some. And I think COVID did for HR.
Agree.
Simply because all of a sudden, as you said, we were in the center of attention, I guess, in every company, because either it was the board was asking, can we just send people home? Like, are we even allowed? Do we need insurance? Whatever. Do we give people, the office supplies and furniture and stuff like this? So all these more, let's say, administrative tasks. But then as well, we all of a sudden were the ones where every employee turned to and asked for advice. Also personally, people were struggling. We realized that working from home with families at home brings challenges to employees. So we needed to talk about that. We needed to, give a platform for, let's say, scattered working hours, or, coach our employees in that direction. We realize that there are people that live alone, are all by themselves in isolation, and cannot cope with that. So it was a multitude of things that all of a sudden HR was in the center of attention, and rightly so. But but that also led to the situation that it was hard for the functions to handle the multitude of things that were coming on to us, from the administrative tasks, from, again, staying compliant, making sure insurances are there, and as a company we are compliant with everything that's needed, with the fastly changing requirements from the governments, but then as well for our employees. And what we saw, apart from how we handled it at SAP, but I think on the market, I think this gave a huge push into investments into HR, into starting to digitalize, data, because they realized that with this fast changing environment, if you don't have what you need, at one spot, and if you don't enable employees to take care of their own data, be it address or whatever, you will not be able to manage it in a situation like this. And I think this was a breaking point to really think about, is HR really only there to take care of these administrative things? No, we are much, much more. We are the ones that really are the orchestrator of well-being for our employees, especially during that time of COVID. But in order to be that, the company needs to support HR with a solid, base for centralization of data, and for standardization of processes in a way that that we can just scale this and take this administrative load out of the brains of HR that we are as HR professionals, because we can add so much more value if we don't have to take care of these topics, 80% of our day.
Absolutely. I love that word, orchestrator. I think that's such a, I also think there's an orchestrate part element, and I think there's an architect element in this as
Oh,
well
I
for the
fully agree.
future.
Yeah.
And no, that's really, yeah, okay, that's really. So, are we seeing then that this acceleration then in terms of how we're seeing this? You know, we've heard it for a number of years. This consumerization experience, like what do we experience as consumers from a digital landscape and how we use everyday tools or everyday services? Are we seeing that acceleration, or have seen that acceleration on then internally inside the organization on some of these kind of the digitalization journey to enable employees to give them more autonomy around some of these tasks?
Mhm.
Have you seen that?
Yes, totally. I have. And I also believe it's a natural, it's not only like we do this for the sake of, again, making HR more strategic, but quite simply as well to attract, the talents for and the skills that we need in the future. Because quite frankly, even like we can be digital natives or we can be not, but we live our life digitally. Like I we schedule appointments with our doctors via an app. We book our flights. We board our flights on our phone. We I don't know. We just we pay with our phones. We do everything with our phones basically. And I believe that if we going into a company where I still have to deal with lots of paper to get vacation approved or whatever timesheets and
Mm,
stuff like that. This is a culture. This is a culture shift or a shock even from. This is no longer real life scenario, right? And I believe that companies have to as well develop in a way in the direction that life is developing too. Because if people are used to an easy handling of, let's say, data processing or updating or quick quick finalization of some tasks simply by utilizing an app, whatever. I think this is what we have to provide for them too. It's a
yeah.
necessity. It is no longer a goodie.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah. And this, what does this allows? Because this is the other thing as well, is HR functions from reactive into proactive. And traditional HR functions are always dealing on it, tend to be dealing on more reactive plethora of different tasks and needs from the organization. So with this kind of digitalization and some of the automations and some of these progressions that are happening, what does this free up and what does this allow HR to do or to focus on, in your opinion? What could they be doing more of?
I believe with digitalization of simply data and also getting access to data anytime, anywhere, it enables HR to finally take decisions based on reality or driving business cases with the business, showing the truth in the organization, be it outcome of some surveys that we're taking or continuous surveys that, for example, we have been doing check-in surveys with all of our employees during COVID. And we were looking into the results and then also finding out that from the many activities that we've done in the beginning, also, in addition to our normal, let's say, health and well-being programs as well, after some time, there was kind of we could sense a trend to fatigue of too much of this from the
Mm,
employers. So we could change our direction before it became a bit of as well annoyance almost with
mm,
employees. So I think this access to data and the easy handling of getting feedback as well enables us to create much better strategic programs for employees. But I think from a business perspective, we can prove to the business leaders that we work with the necessity for development programs, the let's say the scarcity of talent. If we talk about succession management, all these topics we can now base on on data that is accessible in the system also to our leaders and employees, um, it's not always assumption, and it's not waiting until, saying with success management, somebody leaves tomorrow and we, oh surprise, do not have somebody who can, join immediately. Yeah.
Yeah. We need to remove assumptions out of decision making in leadership. There's too much going on. It's been problematic for many years now.
Exactly.
So, okay. So the question that was coming into mind there was, from a HR function point of view, so you think about your team potentially from a context point of view, with this shift from this, say potentially previously reactive into then capturing data to be able to build business cases, to be able to show the ROI, or what's the improvement. What springs to mind as well is the how. So for me, like, how are HR functions and people that work in HR also evolving from a mindset and from a competence point of view? Because I think there's there's a need in that as well. I think to add more value in different ways. You don't just suddenly know how to do it. There are evolutions just in that in the discipline of HR. How do you see the roles within HR evolving from this kind of traditional into the more modern and even futuristic approach to people?
I think this is a brilliant question, because indeed this is something we we often tend to forget. Like, we pride ourselves that finally we evolve from back office to a kind of front office, and we're there, strategic partners. And yes, the knowledge is there. Like, I don't know nobody in my team or in the wider context that is not capable of providing that. But again, it's the how, because years over years, we were there to serve the requests, so to say, or we were there to process the more, whatever is labor law necessary to process that. And now all of a sudden, we are there to present, data to the business, and we prove that, there is a showcase for certain topics. So definitely we cannot leave HR professionals alone in this. Again, I believe we are capable of much more than we think, simply because we have that expertise and that mindset, and we have grown with this. So we have it inside us, but not all of us have the self-confidence to also show it, and to go out with it. So I think we have to guide them. And what I've done is, a small example there, where
Right.
especially in Eastern Europe, where we very often faced, when I started in the role, high attrition and, escalations in different areas, especially in countries where we have this more centralized, let's say, services or development centers, where other companies had the brilliant same idea, because just we have the tech skills on the market. And we created a project, and not going into detail, but it was data based, where I brought together different functions within HR. And I said, let's combine our expertise, and let's combine as well the data that we have around a market, internal, HR data, attrition, but also, salaries, but even macroeconomic data, like what's the unemployment rate, what's the inflation rate, all these things combined. And I invited all of those functions to sit on a quarterly basis, to sit with the business leaders of these functions. So this was new for the business leaders, like, what, I don't only have one HR person. But then second, I didn't put the pressure all on one HR person to know it all. And I kept everybody in their kind of area of expertise, somewhat in their comfort zone when it comes to speaking to their function. But in combination, the business received all of a sudden transparency and knowledge from HR that they were blown away with. And that created a much better bond and trust between our customers and the HR function. And plus, of course, it boosted the self-confidence of our HR people in the countries, right? And that was to me, it was more of a natural thing. Like, let's just show them what the situation is, and let's get their view as well into what they hear from the employees, and how can we become better in anticipating, certain things that are coming. But it was actually, it turned out to be a great, let's say, an enablement of the HR function to really be much more front office, and also our customers to be blown away by the depth of knowledge that we actually carry in the function, right? So I think we have to guide the HR function into this center of attention. But I'm 100% sure that most of us have it in us, because we are what makes us unique is our knowledge.
I agree. I love that example. What springs to mind is there's two things that spring to mind. Is one of my narratives, which is everything you need is inside your organization. You just need to unlock it. And I think it aligns into, I think, doing more with what you have. And I think we're always seeking externally, like benchmarking or what are others doing or what's the case studies. It's like, no, forget all that. It doesn't matter. It's actually unlock what you have inside your team and your organization. Is so much in there if you just break those silos and bring people together. And I think that was a good example there where you shared, multiple HR contacts in a room sharing their own different perspectives around a particular challenge, which then gave so much more value to the business. And then I think really vitally in that is I always like to switch perspectives as much as I can, is what is then the leader's experience of HR in that their own experience, and how is that then shifting? And you've already shared there, it builds trust. It built, they were blown away by that experience. So just like even thinking about it as an experience, like how do I experience HR now before COVID or after COVID? So I think it's a really nice example. Can I just ask as well, because there's something in that, like from an industry point of view, because I'm curious to see this, because what I'm seeing is this evolution happening where we've got HR, and I've seen some stuff on LinkedIn where people are now comparing, because we love this binary, it's either one way or the other, HR function, people and culture function, and they're kind of comparing these two functional areas. And then you've got this employee experience movement, and I think there's also a discipline emerging without a doubt. I actually see definitely future career channels evolving, and I really do see that in the future. And so how do we make sense of all of that? Employee experience, people and culture, HR, and should we be thinking this as maybe as one or separately? What can we learn from all these different emerging areas? What's your thoughts on that? What's your take and view?
So what we have done just very recently at SAP is that we saw the trends, and we also saw post-COVID changes again in how talents are looking for new challenges now. Are much bolder now as well to move again and potentially move outside. Are more also are again more open to change companies again. I mean, the pandemic is over, where we saw a bit of a stop of career development as well, because it was a new situation. Everybody was needed time to deal with it. Now that it's slowing down, this is what we see, and we saw this as well as a next step of the evolution of our HR model. And what we did is we created this people experience function within the HR organization that combines different how should I now explain this best? So different functions. Again, we've changed the focus of some of the functions, and we evolve, because what we realize is, number one, that we need expertise in the different areas. Like we have created a dedicated future of work team that is really dealing with trends in working models, and really doing that, so to say, separately, and really specializing into that. Of course, tightly collaborating with local HR directors to see what is possible from a local labor law perspective, and things like that. So we split different topics and work focuses out of the function, to be able to focus again on what we believe right now is very necessary, to serve our employees best, to create the best people experience inside in the company for our employees. So what that entails is, as well, we of course keep the function of the local HR directors. You not only need it from, like, you need it from a local labor law standpoint, of course.
Mm,
But again, what we've dealt with as HR directors was not only that representative function, to be the HR leader in the country, to be part of the local management team. It was much more as well the administrative, topics that come to you simply because you are the one, accountable for the labor law topics. But we split that out into very focused and experienced HR colleagues that take different functions across. And HRDs are now there to create this unique environment for employees and leaders in the different countries, depending on what the trends are in the country, or the local culture even is. In some countries, we have a development lab where we have a bit of a different culture than where we're more of a sales focus office, so to say. So
yes.
inside that, create initiatives as well for employees to feel the togetherness, to maybe even be motivated as well to come together in the office now post COVID, to get used to that sense of community again. But not only that, not only retain what we have, but quite frankly, what we realized is that we also need to speak up more outside on the market and talk about, what a great employer we are. We cannot kind of like just, think that, it's fine if we retain the people that we have. We need new skills in the future. But also, labor markets are getting so hot again right now that it's essential that we are known as a top employer on the market. So it's that complete mindset shift of, we are focusing inside the organization. We create an environment where people can work in a healthy, safe environment. They can develop themselves, they can grow, they can thrive. But no, this is not enough. We need to as well talk about that outside to peers, but also be visible to prospects, so to say, talent prospects on the market.
Yeah. What's shifted? So I remember your topic that you shared at Disrupt HR was the new kind of HR structure and approach at SAP. And it was launched. I think it launched. Was it? My memory serves me right, because you were saying it's done now. I think it was launching 1st of October. Memory
Yes,
serves
that
me
is
right. Is
true.
that correct? So how's it gone, and what's changed? Just to give us a sense of where you've come from, and then to now today, and how has it been the first 2-3 months? How's it gone?
I truly have to say that come October 1st, you could sense a change in how we perform our jobs. Of course, it's still like, lots of question marks, topics come up, and people are like, so technically, who's now responsible for this? But that's natural,
Of course,
But
it's a journey.
it's no longer that, yeah, we transform, but there are topics where we don't know where they belong. I will handle them locally, because in the end, locally, it needs to be done. I think this has changed really drastically, and this is a great thing. I think we talk about this, we bring it up, and we really want to define a way how in the future we will deal, with the topics in the light of the new setup of the different functions. So I see a very open discussion, and again, a really newly created transparency about what is actually landing on the desk of the different functions now, and does it really belong with me, and then why? Because right now I don't see it. Or where would it in the in the whole framework of the new reality. And what I also see is an uptake of really external um, activity from the HRDs on LinkedIn, the ones I'm connected with, or also in articling conferences. We have the HRDs that I think have become much more open to accept these challenges as well, because I guess the focus now allows it. And I think the other functions as well have taken up what the other tasks that were with us before. So I see a very big step already into that direction, even within the first 3 months. Tons of topics we still have to clarify, and
Oh,
there is it's really it's an environment where people openly talk about it, and where we always find as well interim solutions, how to ensure really ensure that the experience for our employees and managers is not, let's say, disrupted by the disruptive change really within the HR organization. And
yeah.
this is really great. I like the spirit. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fine balance. It's a fine balance, and there must be. I mean, with any strategic shift, there's always, there's areas where you're like, yeah, this is going to be great, and there's other areas like, oh, we're just not sure yet. It's a bit of an experiment.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's definitely. Well, could you just share? I mean, are there any elements that you felt that, well, going into this, where you thought this is an experiment? This is a litmus test. We don't really know how it's going to land yet. Um, yeah,
Well,
anything to share?
it's I mean, and it's still like tons of topics that are very distinct to local organizations, be it some certain benefits that have been defined at some space, and that somehow the administration used to lay with the local HR business partners or HRD, simply because historically it was like that, and you were kind of always used to be doing that. So you kind of like you've always did it, and even if somebody else took over, it was part of the handover, but nobody really talked about it. And of course we were identifying this then in the new setup, where all of a sudden this function, or let's say not only the function but much more as well, the capacity locally was no longer actually there. And very often when I said, I'm really curious to see, how this in the end is going to land. And I clearly see here many discussions and a bit of like, because nobody really knows where now this should belong, because we haven't been talking about that kind of, but this is good, I
Yeah.
like it, because even right now it still sits locally, because we haven't found anywhere to give it to. Quite frankly, it is not part of the portfolio of an, let's say, HRD, at least not at SAP. And so I think the only fact that we're discussing this and that we're open to discuss it, and find a new place, and also find, maybe consciously even decide that it will stay with us, but then at least we have, all consciously thought about it, and
Mm.
took a common decision. And I like that a lot. But definitely, and this is also what I really have to say, a big shout out also to the global organization, is that they clearly said there is no other way. We are going to take that decision. This is the next evolution. But hey, let's have an open dialogue. And if things do not work out after a quarter or two, let's adopt them again so we make them work. And I think this was amazing. I think this was only possible as well because we keep evolving our HR model every couple of years. We take a bolder step in, bringing us to the next level. But I think this was the first time when this was so clearly communicated, and I think we have the maturity as well to take this, because I'm a firm believer that top down, you have to have a rock solid decision, no discussion. We will do this step kind of like attitude in order to make an organization, accept the change, because we don't like change. It's always a disruption in our routine, and it's something uncomfortable to say now that, hey, listen, we will do this. There is no discussion. Yes, but hey, let's see after a quarter or two, and if things really do not work, let's just keep in touch, and we may adopt if something really does not work out, or where we see we have to tweak it again. 5 years ago, I would have said, my goodness, this is never going, because everybody wants to keep everything, as it is right now. But this time, I think it was great. And it was the right thing to do, because the organization is mature enough and also has the, let's say, self-confidence now to wanting to contribute. And it's a very constructive discussion, I have to say. I like that a lot.
Oh, I love that example. Wow. So much coming to mind on that one. I think the top-down clarity is always critical.
Yeah.
I'm also wondering in this whether the experimental nature of COVID just woke a few people up in that we can experiment, and we have, and there are good things on the other side, because I know it's all for the wrong reasons, but there was some good stuff that's come out of COVID for sure, and we're still in that experimentation mode. And I love the fact, I think you are for some of the components of this new HR strategy and the deployment, there are elements where it is an experiment. And I think that everybody is more comfortable with that. I think some of that could be attributed to the journey that we've all been on in during the COVID period. Next year, I was going to share this in LinkedIn in the new year, but I'll share this now. But my one of my words for 2023 is experimentation. And I think this is actually, I think, in from some of the conversations and research that we've done, I think this is something we all have to get used to, is this constant experimentation, and to dare. I think you used the word dare. I think is absolutely critical, and to be comfortable in just saying, hey, we don't know we don't know what's going to happen, but we're going to experiment, and it might fail, but we're still going to learn something from it, and we're going to move to something else. So I think that's a really, really nice example. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Love it. So let's future gaze, just to have a think about this. What are you kind of seeing in 2023? It's the time of the trends end of the year, isn't it? Everybody's making their predictions and producing their reports based on maybe some data, or maybe just their own predictions. Who knows? But let's what do you see? What sort of some of the predictions you see evolving into next year? What some of the words, perhaps maybe I invite you to think of some words to share that would resonate for you for next year.
So in the, COVID is kind of over, but now we're in this economically rather unstable, let's say, environment that that brought some macroeconomic trends already this year, where especially large organizations like ours, we have to think about how we deal with that on a mid-long-term run as well. And I believe that this is something that next year will bring. We really have to, let's say, see the development as well, be it inflation, be it also how the labor markets react to it. And don't be too late in, again, reacting to whatever is necessary. Be it, different ways how we attract talents, creating more transparency around we do things, what we offer, really rethinking potentially as well some of our, current structures when it comes to maybe even payment, I don't know. But that's, I think, I would have never called it experimenting, but I think it will come down to this, because we are in a not stable environment, and the market is changing so quickly. Smaller companies are reacting very quickly on, let's say, inflation, where we say, listen, this is a trend right now, but, let's be a bit conservative when it comes to that, especially also we have huge organizations, and it's a bit of a different thing, but it makes it hard for us to attract outside talent at the moment, or even, have our inside talents, react much faster to offers from the outside if all of a sudden they're much, much higher. or there are rumors, that all other companies are reacting to that. So I think it's an environment that is changing so quickly, where large organizations are a little bit slower to I think hop on to certain trends, simply because it's longer decision chains and topics like that. But I believe that we have to go into that, especially in less mature markets, to be much more experimenting and trying out this smaller company mindset. We need to go for this. We need to have the, let's say, freedom as well to change our ways of doing things in order to stay competitive and successful on the market. And I think here again, the role of the local HRD is extremely, extremely important, and is also now where the company management and the local management is really relying on for advice.
I love that. Can I just ask as well? So, just to share some, I guess, on a reflection of the journey that you've been on, if you were to give just maybe 2 or 3 guiding points for someone who's working in perhaps a HR function that was similar to SAP's 6 months ago, maybe, or maybe a year ago, and is thinking about some form of evolution or adoption, what would you? Are there any kind of 2 or 3 kind of areas of advice you would just give people, just to kind of have a think or to bring some focus to?
Mm-hmm. One topic that I say and that I truly believe is that digitalization has to make a company more human, and will make it, but we have to also accept that. But digitalization of, let's say, HR processes cannot mean that we need less HR people. It means that we focus the expertise much differently and in a much more value generating and experience creating really function for our employees and leaders. We then have time, and it frees up our capability of providing the best possible environment, really, in all aspects for our employees and leaders. So as a company, do not think about digitalization HR makes it less human centric in a way. Of course, this is the perception in the beginning as well of employees and leaders. So from that start, it has to be a guided principle in that transformation. And of course, it makes you more efficient and of course, and it's not a myth that companies are then also looking to reduce a bit of, HR workforce. I can understand that from a business perspective, but keep that in mind, that you then need to focus more on experience management for employees and managers outside of what's necessary to stay compliant. And that goes along with the second topic that I really see is that also what we're now focusing on again, where I see is that we've potentially lost a bit of focus in, is creating that the space for HRDs to be there for each and every kind of employee in a country, where everyone knows where to turn to for their different topics in HR, and it will mostly be digitally and digital entrance to whatever solution it is. But what I mean is for that we need to keep in mind the uniqueness of local organizations towards the labor market, but inside SAP as well, and creating initiatives that cater to the needs or maybe even the dreams, of employees within the organization. Because I think this is what is natural what gets lost a little bit if you start, becoming more efficient and having the digital, the digital ways of solving HR topics, and you're brilliant at that. And so everybody feels well served from an HR perspective. But then who am I as SAP employee in Germany, even though my job is in Eastern Europe, but I have a German contract? And I think there HR needs to have a huge focus again in creating that sense of belonging and that sense of community in the local organization. And I think this is something that we now focus on much more again, that can get lost in this journey of becoming more and more digital. And that's a separate focus to becoming more human, is really keeping that in mind.
I agree. I think a theme across both of those areas you shared was human-centric.
Yes.
And then also this thing, quoting, the Experience Economy book, is this difference between a service and an experience. And one is service is time well saved, and the other one, experience, is time well spent. And yes. I think, digitalization and the efficiency elements will allow then obviously a much more transactional or a gate into an area, but then it allows the HRD or the leaders or the managers to then be able to have, where do we need to show up? Like, where are the moments that we really need to, that's time well spent for us and also our employees. I heard that as well in the examples you shared there. My word, I honestly could talk to you for hours. Okay, so Sabrina, I just want to say how grateful I am to have connected with you randomly on a stage in Serbia, and to be sitting here today having a wonderful conversation. I really enjoyed the conversation. I'm really grateful for your time and your contribution to the podcast, and sharing out your knowledge and your perspective of the world. And so thank you so much.
No, thank you, Steve. Really, I felt so honored when you asked me to join the podcast, and it has been an amazing conversation we've had, and great reflection as well for me again upon what's going on right now inside our function. So thank you so much for the opportunity, really.
It's amazing. And if anybody wants to connect with you, I'm happy to share your LinkedIn profile.
Absolutely.
Happy to share. Yeah. Again, thank you so much. And see you soon.
See you soon. Thank you.
And there you have it, another episode of the Experienced Designers podcast. Thank you so much to the amazing Sabrina. What an absolute privilege to have you on the show. And I'm so grateful to all of the Disrupt HR Serbia crew for putting on that amazing event and actually having an opportunity for us to connect and make this thing happen in the first place. As always, all the links to the show are on the website, www.theexperiencedesigners.com. And also onto our next episode, which will be with my co-host Shani, who met Eva Hambold discussing the topic of feedback, not one to be missed. In the meantime, as always, please follow this podcast. It goes a long way to helping us build our audience and increasing our guests. And until the next time, bye for now.